All right, please be seated. So for those who don't know, as a church, we've been traveling through Matthew now for probably close to 4 months. We're only just started the Sermon on the Mount. We're in the middle of the Beatitudes. We did the first 4 Beatitudes a couple of weeks ago. We took a little bit of a break because I had to study for an exam. And Tammy did a beautiful sermon last week on Nehemiah. But we're back on to the Beatitudes again. Now this sermon's all about how to be merciful like Jesus. How to be merciful like Jesus. Now just to give you a recap on the Beatitudes that we've done so far, we have to keep in mind that the Beatitudes are a series of continual blessings. And you have to actually do something in order to in turn receive the blessing. And the reverse is also true. If you don't do that thing, you don't get the blessing. And each of them are linked. They build upon each other. They're like layers. And like I said, we've already done the first 4 Beatitudes. And the layers we looked at there was, with the first Beatitude, the idea of spiritual poverty. That the Christian is supposed to be in a state of humility, and that they're supposed to recognize their absolute need for Jesus, their absolute need for mercy through Jesus, that without him, they are lost. And then when we moved on to the second Beatitude, we saw this extension of this idea of spiritual sorrow, this idea that we're in a constant state of continual grief or mourning, that it was an active process that we continually went through daily, that we would look at ourselves and say, we are a fallen human being. We're not perfect. No matter how hard I try, I will never be able to make myself perfect. Only Jesus can bring about that kind of transformation. Only Jesus can make me perfect in the eyes of God. Yet we wrestle inside ourselves, like Paul did as we looked in Romans that time, with the idea that I have the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is transforming me, but at the same time, I'm still imperfect. I'm still flawed. I still continue to do the things that I know that I shouldn't. I still continue to not do the things that I know that I should. And then we moved from there and we saw that the Christian heart should be both humble and meek. That the Christian should see that they are like everybody else on the planet. That they are a fallen human being. That they are flawed and imperfect. That they struggle. They make mistakes. They have personality quirks. They've been through pain, trauma, suffering. And that this actually unites us and brings us all together. And as a result, we should have humility in relation to our own sin, to the point that we're okay if somebody was to tell us that we were in sin. And that we would actually humbly want to seek out accountability for that sin. That our hearts would want to be actively seeking forgiveness and actively confessing and actively seeking to grow as a Christian. Which led naturally into the 4th Beatitude, that we would hunger and thirst for righteousness. The idea that we looked at there that week was that a Christian should both be looking for sanctification, to be continually changed by the Holy Spirit, to be look more like Jesus, but at the same time we should be looking to salvation in those around us who haven't come to know Jesus yet. There was this duality to the hunger and thirsting for righteousness. And what we looked at when we summed those 4 Beatitudes up is that they were looking at what does a Christian's heart look like in relationship to others and in relationship to God. And the next 4 Beatitudes are intricately linked to those. And what they show us is what the actions of a Christian should look like, coming from that heart that was mentioned in the first 4 Beatitudes. And often the way I kind of try to look at this is with that psychology. And we're going to come up to this again after we read the passage. This idea that we have beliefs, We have a faith, we have beliefs, and that these in turn flow out of us and determine what our attitudes are going to be, what our actions are going to be, and what our behaviors are going to be. You can kind of see that the first four Beatitudes were kind of setting the concrete beliefs of a Christian and what they should look like. And now, as we get into the fifth Beatitude, the sixth, seventh, and eighth, we're going to be looking at what our attitudes, actions, and behaviors should be as an outpouring of those beliefs. So let's turn now to the passage that we're looking at. So we're in Matthew chapter 5. That's Matthew chapter 5, and we're going to look at verse 7. And verse 7 reads like this: "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy." Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Now, I don't mean to pick on vegans. But the thing I love about vegans is they're true to their convictions, aren't they? So think about the pub test. You're with your mates, you're with your friends, you're hanging out over some beers. And you say to your mates, "I believe it's wrong to eat animal products. And this is the reason why." All right? And right in front of you, you got a vegetarian dish. All right? And they see you constantly eat only vegetarian food. You don't eat any meat products. There's no disconnect between your belief that it's wrong to eat animals, it's wrong to kill animals for food. Your actions, your attitudes, and your beliefs back that up. So I don't see a disconnect. Now, what happens if the same person said it's wrong to eat animal products, and right in front of them is a big fat chicken palmy? All right? Pub test now, they're going to go, "Mate, you are full of it. There is no way you are believing what you're preaching to me about animal products. You got chicken, cheese, the works on your plate right now. It's not true." The strength of their conviction for a vegan is admirable. When they believe they don't want to eat animal products, they don't eat animal products. They go all in. Now, same pub test. Christian sits with a bunch of non-Christians and says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy." And then starts talking about Jesus and everything that they believe, but then they don't treat anybody with any mercy. There's a disconnect, isn't there? There's the same disconnect between their beliefs, what they're sprouting, and their attitudes and actions and behaviors. And I bring this up a lot, don't I? When I go through the psychology, I keep saying it has to be a flow-on effect. And the flow-on effect at the end, your output, your attitudes, your actions, behaviors don't match with your beliefs, you've got to go back. And you've got to go, what's happening with my beliefs? How strongly am I really believing them? Where is my heart at with God? And that's what this sermon's really going to do. It's going to test you. It's going to ask you how strong are your convictions. It's going to challenge you. And John writes about this a little bit. So if you've got your Bible with you, you're going to do a bit of flicking today. So if you go to 1 John, right at the back end, and you go to chapter 3, that's chapter 3 of 1 John, and we'll go to verse 17. "But whoever has the world's goods and sees his brother in need and closes his heart against him, how does the love of God abide in him?" John doesn't mince words, does he? It's pretty concrete, down the line. He tells it as it is. He does it through all of his epistles. And that's the challenge that he puts to you. How true are your convictions? You know, you believe that you've received mercy through Jesus Christ, and you believe that others should receive mercy through Jesus Christ as well, but how good are you at demonstrating that mercy to others? How good are your actions compared to the strengths of your beliefs? And when we look at this passage, and the reason I picked the NASB translation is because it uses the world's goods. Some of your other translations might say material possessions. They might try and go quite narrow in their approach. And when I brought this up with a friend of mine, their response was, oh, what it comes down to is we're just the giving of our possessions and our time as much as Jesus did. The problem is that is a very superficial way of looking at mercy. That's cheapening God's mercy. God's mercy is so much more than that. And we're going to see that as we go through the rest of the sermon. But when you look at this passage and you think about the world's goods, think about a 21st century economy. We don't just traffic in mineral ore or electronics or food. We traffic in skills. We traffic in knowledge. We traffic in experience. There's countries throughout the world that have skill shortages. There's companies that lock up information that's valuable in patents because it has value, it's important. See, the world's goods aren't just physical. There's knowledge and experience. And as we're going to see, the impact of sin in someone's life is much more deeper than just what you can see on the outside by the fact that they might need a helping hand financially or some material food or something to help them out. Then what they need for mercy might be much deeper than that. You see, grace deals directly with sin and guilt of sin. Mercy deals directly with the results of sin. And you see, when humanity in the past rejected God, chose not to follow him anymore, chose not to seek relationship with him anymore, to go on their own, to do the things they knew they shouldn't do, and to not do the things they knew they should do, God had a choice. He could have gone, that's it. They're lost. They're stained by sin forever. Their imperfection, no. They rejected me, don't like it, can't handle it, walking away. I'm just going to judge them all. Be done with it. But God didn't do that, did he? God's a relational God. He created us for a relationship with him, and he didn't give up on the relationship. He reached out, selflessly reached out, sacrificially loved us, and sent his only son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross for us so he can make a way for us to receive mercy instead of judgment. Mercy is so much deeper than what we think of it as. Yes, there's that empathy, that's seeing somebody in need, but it's also seeing that their needs might not be material. They might be much deeper than that. You see, sin can be dealt with in many ways. And we've already looked at a couple of them. It can be dealt with mercy, discipline, punishment, or judgment. So if I say commit a crime, and I go before a judge, all right, there's a couple of different outcomes that might happen. For example, he might just discipline me. He might say, you did the wrong thing. I'm not going to put you in prison, but you're going to have to do some time out. You're going to have to do some community service, cop a fine, good behavior bond. All right? Maybe he shows complete mercy and says, first time offense, you're a good upstanding citizen, don't do it again. Maybe I get full on punishment and judgment. No, what you did was too much. You know, we're not even going to give you minimum sentence. You're getting maximum sentence, jail time, no chance of parole, just the full works. Just these varying degrees of how the mistakes we make, if we commit a crime or something, can be dealt with. And so it is with the results of sin. We can receive mercy, we can receive discipline, we can receive punishment, or we can ultimately receive judgment when we stand before God. And we said that mercy deals with the results of sin, but the results of sin run very, very deep. See, it's not just a simple matter of someone lost their job and they need income support. Somebody lost their house, they need somewhere to stay. It's not even so simple as someone's received domestic violence and they need just somewhere to stay or they need someone to help with. Look back in your own life. Have you ever wondered why you do the things you do? Why you behave the way you do in certain situations? Why you react to certain personalities the way you do? If you looked deep into your own life, you'd probably see that the results of sin from other people have directly changed who you are as a person and how you respond in certain situations. For example, I don't have an example in my life of how to not be sort of judgmental towards others and resentful. My parents both were resentful to each other. That was the only example I had. My mother would complain about my father, and my father would complain about my mother. And as I grew up, the resentment in their hearts grew and got deeper and deeper and deeper. So for me, when I feel an injustice, or I feel that something isn't right, it hasn't been done the way that it should be, I'm prone to resentment. Because the example put before me as I was growing up was nothing other than that. And so that is a sin burden that I take with me and struggle with deeply in my heart. Another example might be, for example, I was in a terrible car accident and I developed post-traumatic stress disorder. And to this day, despite years of psychotherapy, I can't stand crowded spaces, full of people moving around, being noisy. I can't handle it. I have to get myself out of that environment and go somewhere where it's quiet. I know there's some people that struggle with generalized anxiety disorder. I used to have that when I was in med school. You're just anxious about everything. And they can't help it. And you might say to them, stop being so anxious. Relax. Chill. But they can't. It's just ingrained into them. It takes years to overcome something like that. Take social anxiety disorder. Not too sure what the person's going to say to me. They're going to like me. Don't want to be a bother. Don't want to interrupt them. No, I'm not going to say anything. You be shy, timid. You don't want to interact. You don't want to talk so much to other people. You don't interact with other people so much. And then people look on the outside and they go, what's wrong with them? They seem awkward. Why are they talking to me? This is the thing. Our life experiences and what's gone through our lives changes who we are as a person and impacts how we relate to other people and how our personality and who we are. The results of sin go much deeper than simply just a physical need. The need might be much deeper. It might be personal, relational. They might need connection. They might need understanding. They might need knowledge and experience to be shared to them to help them to grow and to change as a person. To have mercy, to overcome the results of this sin in their life. And when I use the example of the person who might be shy, timid, or not interacting, they might sit and not talk to other people, they might not interact with the group. I also gave some superficial judgments in my example, didn't I? I thought to myself, what's wrong with them? Why aren't they talking? Why aren't they interacting? Why are they being so awkward? And the problem is that when we focus on the idea that being merciful is about the material, we have a very superficial outlook. We're not going deep. We're not looking at a person and saying, I wonder if they've been hurt in the past. I wonder if they're shy because they're really anxious and they're worried about what people are going to say. Maybe they don't want to speak up in the group because they think that their answer is going to be wrong, or they're going to be judged, or they're going to be teased, they're going to be made fun of. Sometimes it's very easy to quickly label somebody and say, oh, they're like this because of whatever. But fail to actually get to know the person. Fail to actually get to know them at a deep level, to understand their life, what makes them who they are, why they are the way that they are. And see, there's two ways of dealing with the results of sin. And like I said, it can be judgment or mercy. And as human beings, we can choose to be judgmental, even on a superficial level. We can look at somebody and say, they're not interacting because of this. Well, I'm not going to spend time with them because it's too difficult to interact with them. I'm finding it too hard. But mercy makes the effort, doesn't it? Mercy reaches out to that person and says, hey, I notice you're a little bit quiet. I notice you're not speaking out in the group. I notice you sort of keep to yourself. How you going? Is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything that we can do for you to make you feel more welcome and make you feel more comfortable? See, we're a church that's trying to plant and to grow. And the problem with superficial judgments and assessments about people is it doesn't build relationship. It doesn't build connectedness. It prevents it. You've already labeled them in your mind. You've already given a reason as to why they are the way that they are, and you haven't dug deep. You haven't got to know the person. You haven't got to fully understand the depths and the results of sin in their life, in their past, that have made them the way that they are. Something traumatic could have happened to this person. Or maybe the results of sin was the fact that it's a broken world, that we physically decay, that our genetics are flawed, that they have errors in their code. And maybe, just maybe, this is how they were born neurologically. Maybe that makes them shy. Maybe that makes them awkward. Maybe they don't have the ability to interact with people the way we expect normally. There are so many ways that sin can affect each and every one of us, both physically, spiritually, mentally, not just the superficial aspects of our life, the material, our job, our house, our income. It affects us at a much deeper level than that. So we've got one more passage to look at. So if you flick back to Matthew, but this time we're in Matthew 25. So Matthew chapter 25, verses 40 to 45. Now I love this section of Matthew. There's so many really great parables. Yeah, you can spend hours reading them, that's for sure. So in verse 40, okay? The king will answer and say to them, truly I say to you, to the extent that you did it to one of these brothers of mine, even the least of them, you did it to me. Then he will also say to those on his left, depart from me, accursed ones, into the eternal fire, which has been prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. And this is the one I want you all to listen to. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. Then they say themselves also will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and did not take care of you? Then he will answer them, truly, I say to you, to the extent that you did not do it for one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. It says it right there. I was a stranger and you did not invite me in. Here is a beautiful depiction of the empathy in our hearts that as Christians we are supposed to have to those in need. If we see someone who doesn't have clothes on, we put clothes on them. If we see someone who needs shelter, we give them shelter. We see someone who needs money, we give them money. That's the easy bit. That's the superficial rendering of mercy. And as we said, God's mercy is more than that. And God's teaching us that right here. It says, I was a stranger and you did not invite me in. You have to connect with other people. You have to build relationship. You have to get to know them at a deep level. No superficial judgments. Leave the judgment to God. That's his job. Your job is to be merciful. To show mercy like what was given to you by God. That's what the whole Beatitude is about. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Contrastly, if you're not merciful, you're not going to get mercy from God. Either now in the kingdom of heaven or in the future kingdom of heaven. A merciful heart is likely to receive more mercy from God in the present, and they will ultimately receive mercy in the end because they understand the first Beatitude. See, the first Beatitude is linked to the fifth one, second to the sixth, third to the seventh, fourth to eighth. So the first one is, I have spiritual poverty. I understand that I need mercy from God, that I am lost without him. I have absolute need for Jesus. Therefore, the fifth one, blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. It's a natural flow and from effect. If you know that you need salvation from Jesus as a Christian, and you need mercy, you will also be merciful in time to everybody else. But not at a superficial level. That's what the whole message is about. Getting deep, getting relational, connecting with people. Because that's what God did. God didn't look at the results of sin, a fallen humanity, imperfect, constantly doing what it shouldn't do, not doing what it should do, and give up. No, he did not do that. He was selfless. He was sacrificial. He loved us. He reached into human history and sent his only son, Jesus Christ, so that a path towards mercy instead of judgment could be made. Someone's need might be spiritual. Someone's need might be personal. It might be relational. You might have the knowledge and experience to speak into their life, to speak into their heart, and to help them start to unravel and unpack the results of sin in their life. To help them to overcome, to help them to change, to help them to come to know Jesus, to help them to come to a relationship with him. You might be that person. The mercy that you might need to provide to an individual could be a lot more than just the physical and material. It might be relational. You might need to get to know them. So like I said, leave the superficial judgment assessments behind. Judgment is for God. Be deep, meaningful, and relational, like God. Don't be superficial in your assessment of mercy. Get to know people deeply. See the results for sin the way God sees them. See how deep they run. See how big a problem it is. Big enough to sacrifice your only son, Jesus Christ. That's how big the problem is. And it affects each and every one of us. See how deep it runs in an individual's life. And reach out to them like God did for you. And reach out and to others. And show them mercy.